What is up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another live stream. Yes, you heard correct. Another live stream. This is episode 142. That's 142 consecutive weeks of the Camera Junkie live stream. And as always, I'd like to thank you for taking the time and hanging out here with me. If it's your first time, welcome. My name's Lewis, also known as Mr. Camera Junkie, where I remind you to upgrade your skills before your gear. And as tradition goes around here, Camera Junkie style, we're going to see exactly who's in the chat. And right off the bat, we have Robert in the house saying hello to the MCJ fam. Let's fix this comment window. I'm going to get that right one day. Let's embiggen it to then, I think, make it shorter. Oh man, let's move it. What's going on? Look at that. Let's try it again. Oof. Okay. Okay, that looks a bit better. All right, let's see if we can lock that in. And there we go. We should be good for the rest of the night. So we'll continue. Right there, he's saying hello, MCJ fam. We also got Sly in the house saying hey to the crew. And Parker Jennings saying hello to everyone. Welcome, welcome as always. Kathy sneaking in saying hey to the fam. How we doing, everyone? And welcome. So now we can get things started. We'll continue to check in the chat. But today we're going to be talking about Sony's new upcoming cameras. They're to be announced, I believe, next week. Either the 28th or the 29th. I'm not sure. It's either Monday or Tuesday of next week that we should be getting confirmation and all of the exact details of the supposed cameras. And so right off the bat, I want to let you know that these are, rumors and my own speculations of what we seem to expect, knowing Sony's type of, strategy when it comes to building cameras, so on and so forth. But the cameras that I am talking about is the predecessor to the Sony A7C, and also a new variation of it being the A7R. So we're getting the Mark II, so to speak, of the A7C. And if you're not familiar with this camera from Sony, let me just break it down a little bit. A lot of people were asking for a side flipping LCD Sony A7 III. Now the A7 III, when it hit the market for about $2,000, it was the best that you can get at that price, doing the things that it would do as far as hybrid, photography and video goes. This is shot in 4K. It was just basically their best all-around hybrid camera, and for the price you couldn't shake a stick at it. So that's why the A7 III became extremely popular. But it being a photography first camera, in the hybrid aspect, it had the capabilities of recording in 4K like I mentioned, but the LCD that was paired to it in the back was more photography based, just like a tilting LCD. Nothing that articulated and allowed you to monitor yourself while you were recording. But the camera, still being so great, sold like hotcakes, and it became very, very popular. But the one thing that people were asking back then was, I want this camera, but I would love it with a side flipping LCD. Well, instead of Sony completely abandoning their photography division with that type of camera, or better said, before they decided to go all in, they wanted to maybe test the waters to see exactly how a side flipping LCD camera would work in their systems. And to my recollection, the A7C was the first one out of all of Sony's cameras to receive that side flip LCD. So they put it on this compact rangefinder style body and let the chips fall where they may, because the A7C is basically a shrunken down side flip LCD A7 III. If it had one thing over it, which I can't recall right now, is the 2959 recording, which I don't think the A7 III had, but just in case, if it was on the A7 III, it wasn't on the A7C. And this C meant more for compact. And I know a couple of people who absolutely love to use the A7C for videography as like their one and only camera for photos and video because of the convenience of that form factor. Now, some of you might know I'm not the biggest fan of the side flipping LCD, but the majority rules when it comes to this aspect, and I can scream to the clouds, so to speak, like an old man. But the new wave of cameras is going to what I believe an older technology in the side flipping, because everyone loves it and is used to it. It kind of, I think it makes them feel at ease. But I digress. After the A7C came out with this side flipping LCD, the success of that camera, and at the price point being $200 under the A7 III at that time that was selling for $2,000, this one came in at $1,800. It did the same thing, and it had newer updates to the autofocusing features that gave it that extra push that a lot of people jumped on that camera right away. But it, once again, being a rangefinder style camera, the one thing that it did do was kind of fell short on the not the on the viewfinder, on the electronic viewfinder. So the electronic viewfinder on the A7C is where I would say it's lacking the most when it comes to that piece of kit or hardware. For this reason, there was room to grow, but by the time that we are now, that we're getting to actually get the predecessor to this, Sony has completely changed their lineup when almost all of their cameras have now this fully articulating side flipping LCD, and it's part of their system because it is selling all of the ZV line of cameras. That was the ones that were to follow from the A7C, including the ZV E1, their full frame Z line camera also has this side flipping LCD, but that line of cameras just totally abandoned the viewfinder altogether, instead of putting in a lackluster viewfinder like some people say you can find on the A7C. So now let's go ahead and see about some of the rumors that have been confirmed, so to speak. And actually the A7C 2 is one of these two cameras that is to be announced, and the other one is the A7C R, which I'm gonna get to in a little bit. So okay, it's saying that the A7C2 is gonna be priced about a couple $100 less than the A7 IV, which kind of makes sense, and it falls in that same type of timeline like I was mentioning with Sony. First, you're going to see the A7 III get replaced with the A7 IV, and all of its new features, and it has quite a few, right, are now going to trickle down basically the same into the A7C Mark II, which is now going to precede that first model. It once again stays and has only one SD card slot, so it's once again not designed for the utmost professionals. That's where they dedicate 2 card slots to have like redundancy photography and video recording, but that is not included into this new system that's going to be announced. Like the A7C originally was priced $200 underneath the A7 3. Excuse me. So let me repeat that to get it out correctly. The same way that the A7C, the Mark 1, was $200 priced under the A7 III, we're most likely going to be seeing that same price reduction of $200 to be followed on to the new Mark 2. And that one being $200 under the A7 IV right now should make it fall around $2,400, which also makes sense, it being what we would expect to be a little bit more of an upgrade of a full frame compact rangefinder style camera compared to the one just underneath it at $2,200 being the Sony ZV-E1, and that's the one that I mentioned does not have a viewfinder whatsoever. So what we would expect out of this new camera with this price jump, because coming from the first one, it's a what, $600 difference, right? The A7C original was $1,800, and this one to be announced at $2,400 makes quite a difference. But all the technology that they packed into this, I think it's still going to be viable, because one of the main features that they're kind of mentioning right now, and behind the scenes, so to speak, of the people who actually have their hands on this unit before it goes live to the public, is that they're not getting overheating issues whatsoever. This is not something that can easily be said with the latest of Sony's releases, that one being the A6700, right? And the A6700, a lot of people saying that if you put it in a semi-warm environment, it is going to overheat on you. So I haven't tested any of these out, but like I said, this one that we're speculating as well also is not available for us to know everything. All right, so let's go ahead and check the chat real quick. We got some people sneaking in. We got Marine X saying what's up, big dog. Oh yeah, and right now, if you haven't done so, please be sure to hit the like button. I always forget to mention that, but it goes a long way. We got Gangster Grandma in the house saying hi to the Camera Junkie crew, to me, and to Aiden. Aiden, Grandma says hi. He is just chilling over there with his toys. Okay, we got Nano in the house, Luis, saying hello to the folks. We also got Mr. Moderator saying sneaking in. And Kevin Cox saying hello to all. And you see, he's always on point, so I appreciate you, sir, as always, making sure that we hit that thumbs up button. It goes a long way. All right, so going back to it, this new A7C, we're hearing, or better said, we're not hearing of anyone having issues with overheating. So that is on a good note when it comes to Sony, and like I was mentioning, compared to their previous release, the A6700, which is Sony's newest APS-C, announced a couple of weeks ago, and that one, the people who have had it did mention the overheating in that as well. But we're hoping for the best, and like I said, we'll see as soon as we actually get our hands on these items, and the people that be the Gerald and Duns and the people who do all the breakdowns, whoever it is that you desire to get this information from, might be telling me otherwise, so to speak, of the overheating. So we'll get to that once it's actually out in the wild. It is said to have a micro HDMI, which in this case, just to be clear, the A7C stands for compact, which would make sense compared to like the C in Canon cameras, which stands for cinema. So it's not the same thing. The FX line is Sony's line of cinema cameras, and those actually have full-size HDMI built into them because of that. Everything else gets the micro just to accommodate the size. But once again, this being a compact photography first hybrid camera, It seems to be expected. It does say that the autofocus is improved over the A7 IV. Now, a camera that came out after the A7 IV is the A7R. Oh, second here. I have to mitigate this right away. I'm getting I guess it's just the time of year, but I'm getting the ants, the little micro ants everywhere. So they're all over my drinks, and they go fast. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like, I need to take care of this right away because I just saw them on my can of Monster, and there was already 3 of them, and I had a little bit while I was doing some editing yesterday, and just in a matter of minutes of me like taking a sip, the next time I went to like pick up the can, like my hand was full of these little super fast micro ants. But I digress. I'm scrolling really hard on that. All right, let's continue. Okay, so Paul is saying, yes, please put a Q colon if you do have any questions. Kevin saying, hoping these new drops have a few people waiting to go to the smaller form factor. I can grab the the A7 IV on a discount. That's always going to happen. But I'm going to also let you know exactly what I did. Some of you might already know. We got Robert in the house saying micro HDMI boo. I don't really have a problem with micro HDMI. But what I do is that I have all of my cameras in cages, right? So I have a small rig cage on it, and then I have a small rig HDMI adapter from the like micro HDMI to full size HDMI that actually has bolts that I like bolt into the cage. So it's like permanently put into the camera, and it doesn't allow the weight of the cable to actually ruin the connection. And then you can just stick in a full size HDMI on the opposite end at your pleasure. Like whenever you need to use it, you connect it, and when you don't, you disconnect it, and it stays on the cage. So that's what I recommend whenever using anything other than full size HDMI. Kevin says those micro ants looking for the micro HDMI. It makes sense. Hey, what's up, John? How are you doing? You're right on time, man. If the way that I see the Camera Junkie live stream, it's like the weekly hangout at the bar. I've mentioned this before, like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. So you made it when you made it. You made it just in time. So thank you for hanging out here. Paul says he does the same thing with the cage and the HDMI adapter. Absolutely. It's just it takes all the pressure of like, oh, I have a micro HDMI on my camera. Right out the bat, you don't even have to worry about it. All right. So now going back to it, what I was saying is that after the A7 IV camera, before the micro ants distracted me, the A7 IV has obviously a much better autofocus than the A7C, but the A7R5 is also out in the wild, and this is an amazing camera, and to my recollection right now, that is the pinnacle when it comes to the autofocus, even though we believe that you're getting the same type of computational autofocus or AI driven autofocus from the A7R5 that has trickled down to the A6700, and now also going to be available on this camera, the A7C Mark II. I did mention the price at $2,400. What I didn't mention was the price of $3,700. And $3,700 is actually the other variant of these releases to come out, which is the A7CR, which is kind of throwing my linguistical for a loop, but the A7CR. So now What is the CR? Well, if you're familiar with other Sony cameras, like this one right over here, this is the Sony A7R2. Now, the R for Sony stands for resolution, and this little guy right here gives you 42.2 megapixels. That's what you get in the photography aspect on this camera, and we're already to the 5th iteration of this said beast. Now, this prior to the A9 and the Alpha 1 being released, which are cameras that are available now, the R cameras was Sony's flagship camera. So you had their basic, entry level full frame camera. Then, before you had the C variants and everything like that, you had the R, and the R stood for resolution. And even in their first A7, they came with the A7R, which jumped from 24 to 36 megapixels for higher resolution. Now, when they got to the Mark II, which is what we have here, it jumped from 36 to 42 megapixels. And then on the Mark III, it jumped from 42 to 61. And that's basically where they have been at, even though they're into their 5th iteration. They've kept the same stacked sensor at the 61 megapixels, for the simple reason that they were able to enhance other features of the camera, and nobody really needs file sizes that are much bigger than the ones that are being produced at 61 megapixels. But that's my own opinion, and I think Sony felt the same way, saying that, you know what, maybe the computers aren't even ready for higher megapixels, so let's see what else we can do from these cameras. So the biggest iteration from the Mark III to the Mark IV was the change of batteries, because this one and the Mark III actually run on the NPF 50 batteries, which are the lower or the smaller batteries when it comes to Sony's. The Z-type batteries that came out for the first time in the A7 III series camera, that one, which was also part of its popularity, like I mentioned before, the fact that it had batteries for days. I digress. The Z-type battery is what was the biggest difference in jumping from the Mark III in the R series to the Mark IV, because the 61 megapixels with that much bigger battery made that camera so much more viable. And that's when that camera really started taking off. And now we're up to the 5th iteration, and to be honest with you, I think that's the next goal of mine as far as cameras go, because I was able to pick up my latest camera, being the Sony A6600. Now you'd be like, Lewis, the A6700 just came out. Why would you get the A6600? And I'm gonna iterate one more time why. Team flip up. I prefer this over the flip out screen, and that's me. And because Sony made sure that they let everyone know that the predecessor to this camera, the A6700 that was just released, has the flip out screen, it might have all those amazing like new features that I was just mentioning about this AI autofocus, but I recognize that this is going to be the best that Sony will produce with this flip up screen, and I got an amazing deal on a 6600 that is basically brand new out of the box, and I am so happy with it. But I am going to put a little bit of an asterisk with what I'm about to say, because I've always talked about, and I've mentioned plenty of times before, that this camera here, the A7R2, was basically a full frame version, but when we made it APS-C, it was equal to the A6600. And that's why I pulled the trigger on the A7R2 at that time instead of buying this camera. And I had to take it back, because when I was actually on the market to purchase that camera there, this camera did not exist, right? What I was comparing the A7R2 was to the camera that came before this, the A6500. And the A6500 did have in-body image stabilization, did have does have 4K, video, but there was the lacking in the autofocus, which actually equates more to the camera that I have here. And this one had better autofocus than the A6500, which is why I pulled the trigger on this bad boy. Plus, in photography, this was also a like two birds with one stone, because it was going to do everything that I wanted as far as video goes out of the A6500, right? But I was also getting my higher resolution in megapixels, jumping from 24 to 42 for my portrait photography. So that's why I decided to go that way. But now that I got my hands on the A6600, I could honestly tell you this camera is amazing, because it has so many of the features that were, let's say, lacking in the A6500, and knocked them out the park. Everything that I like out of the A6100, which is what you're seeing now, is in this camera, plus more. Magnesium alloy body, weather sealing, like not weatherproof or watertight, but weather sealing. So get a little drizzle out in the rain, you don't have to worry about it. And most of all, it also changes from, wait for it, the NPF 50 to the much bigger Z batteries from Sony. So now this APS-C camera, having a smaller sensor than the full frame and having the same size battery, has pretty much battery for days. Like, just battery for days. I was just recording on it. I was like, man, this thing is just amazing. So I'm really happy with this. But as far as my full frame goes, going back to it, I am setting my sights on the A7R5, because of the reason that it has all the upgrades that I haven't been, getting myself into. One of them being the Z-type battery. I've had all the NPF 50s galore, but now that I have a camera with the Z battery, I also know that I'm going to be carrying that battery system with me. So if so, then maybe I actually just start making my transition to the Z-type batteries and start using cameras that carry that. The first one being the A6600, and then everything else that could be using NPF 50s will basically stay within studio, so that I can use it right here. But when I go to do events or hit the road for like creator camp, things like that, I'm going to be on the Z-type batteries, because they're so much bigger. Two batteries will last you the day, and you can interchange them between both cameras. Now, the biggest reason why I want the A7R5, it's fully articulating flip out hybrid type screen. Because even though I do prefer flip up screens, right, I will know for a fact that the Sony A7C Mark II is not gonna have a flip up screen like the A6600, no matter how bad I want it. So I know that that camera's coming out with that same style, and that's if it's needed. But when it comes to my photography first camera, right, I prefer hands down the traditional LCD screen, and which is another reason why I like the A6600 line, because even though it gives you the ability to flip up to monitor yourself, right, what it also does is that it has this traditional feature, which it gives me this angle to basically look top down from my from like my position. And because of this shelf, I am able to frame all of my shots using that, basically the way the old old school cameras used to work, where you'd actually have to look through the viewfinder on the top view so that you can see what the reflex mirror was giving you before you snap the shot. So that traditional type of style where the LCD sits in parallel with the lens, right, and not off to the side, is what I prefer when it comes to photography. The fact that I can flip it completely down so that I can look at it from like a top view, and I can start taking shots here but still be able to frame it without looking it offset, is what I prefer. And last but not least, something that I mentioned to some of my comrades, so to speak, that I don't hear anyone ever complaining about this flip up LCD from Sony giving them problems, as far as like, oh, I dropped it and it broke. Because I've actually dropped my cameras that have this flip up screen, and that's why I vouch for them. And I was like, wow, if that would have been any of the other cameras that use the side flipping screen and you're monitoring it, that falls off a tripod, good luck. Good luck to you, man, because that screen is, you're lucky if it stays on the camera, let alone taking damage. And I can reference videos from Maria Boya where he had his Canon camera in the front seat of his car, and because he accelerated too quickly in his Tesla, it slid in the seat and the LCD hit the cushion in the back, and bye LCD, right? Like a friend of, or co-creator friend of ours, Shane from Geeky Nerdy Techie, just bought the Panasonic GH6 when it came out, and the same thing happened to him, that it fell off a tripod, broke the LCD screen, and he had to wait quite a bit of time before he can get his hands on even a replacement, because the camera was so new that they didn't even have the parts to be available to be fixed, because they were still trying to build as many cameras as possible to meet the demand of what was selling. So there's so many reasons why I absolutely love this, but that is the reason why I'm liking the new hybrid LCD. It gives you the best of both worlds. It still gives you that front to back, like type of tilt that you'd want in a photography camera, but then also gives you the ability to flip it, off to the side and get it, to face forward so that you could monitor yourself if you're using it as a YouTube camera or anything else. So it really is a new version of it, and if it's as sturdy as this metal like design that they have on their APS-C cameras, then I'm all for it, because that's what I think is the biggest key of this design, is this metal structure that's housing the LCD. And that's something similar to what you can find in this new flagship R type camera, the A7R5. So that's what I'm looking for, because even on other cameras, like the one that I have up here, that being the A7, listen to me, I got stuck on the A7. This one is the ZV-1F, the fixed lensed ZV entry level cheapest camera that you can get, and I use as my overhead, right? But this camera also utilizes that front facing side flipping LCD, right? Side flipping. But I can tell you that it's definitely not as sturdy. You have a plastic hinge, like plastic things that are holding it. And just of me using the camera itself, you can just feel the movement in it, right? There's videos of Peter Lindgren fixing the side flipping LCD on the Sony A7S III, like when he had it and he was putting it in use and just utilizing it like every day. The hinge went loose and he had to like disassemble parts of his camera to get to the screws to be able to tighten them down to fix his soon to be major problem on the camera. So it's for these reasons why I say what I say. It's how I feel, and it's all about my own use case. And in my use case, I prefer this. So for that, I think that I'm happy with the system that I got right now. I'm extremely happy with the A6600. If I get a deal, a deal I cannot, what is it? A deal I can't deny, right? um, then I might grab me another A6600, just like I had two A6100s. And just a little bit of news, I was able to sell just this past week my second A6100, so that one is off to a new home. And I was able, to meet the person who I sold it to, and she seems to be very cool, also a content creator. So I'm very happy to see that it's going to a good home and someone that's exploring their creative sides. So really happy about that. All right, let's go and see where we're at in the chat. Sammy Superstar is in the house saying what's up to everyone. Scott is also here. Sammy says some of the features on the A6100, A6600 are like Sony A7S2. See, I'm gonna have to look at that, but I'm not sure which features you're talking about. All I'm telling you is this camera coming out, 4 years ago. It was 2019, late 2019 when it was released. Amazing. I autofocus in video and 4K, right? That it sticks. I have so many videos of Aiden just making him laugh because I love to do that, and testing out the camera at the same time. It's been working phenomenally. Okay, Gretchen says Team Canon can flip out, look up, look down as well, and flip around. Just saying. Yeah, but my thing with it, and like I said, is having the LCD parallel with the lens. If you're already used to it off to the side, hey, more power to you. But it's all about preference, and my preference in every case scenario, like everything, I prefer this version of technology. I do. And like I said, I'm gonna die on this on this hill, so to speak, maybe by myself, but it's everything about it, because even the fact that it doesn't make the camera wider, right? So if I'm using this as a vlog and then I decide to switch hands, bam, it's there. If I had a side flip screen, I'm gonna have to be like, making sure, and then it defeats the purpose if I use my right hand. Oh, I disconnected myself. There we go. Too much twisting, but I guess it defeats the purpose if you put it in your right hand and then you can't see the screen because your hand's covering it. But that's just me. Like I said, I'm gonna die on this hill. Sammy says the A7C. Whoa, look at that. Mark II looks amazing. That might be the camera for me. I want to get it. I want to get a camera in a couple of months that has 4K 10-bit without overheating. It was a little cheaper than the FX3 full frame. Then this might be it, because that's part of what, I've mentioned it on other live streams. The biggest difference when it comes to these cameras is if you want to make that jump into 10-bit video, and that makes the biggest difference when it comes to the image and the color that you can get out of it, and how much you can, manipulate those colors to make them pop in post-production. If you're not familiar with what I'm saying, then just understand that an 8-bit color is kind of like an 8-bit video game. You would be looking at the the regular Nintendo from back in the day, and just something 10-bit was already jumping to Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Right, I'm about to rap like Biggie. So that could be something that you would find, and the more bits gives you a lot more range to mess with when it comes to the colors and how you can push and pull them and manipulate them in your post-production. That's basically what it is. So 10-bit is that much more. Sammy, I don't know if you caught my live stream about the 3D printed cameras, but that's also something else that I really want to mess with, because the bit rate is so much more important for, and then basically everything else, that if that's what you're looking at, then I commend you, because that's, you're looking into the right things, right? To get the most out of your image, it has to do with the bit rate that you can get out of it. And going back to what I mentioned about that 3D printed camera, the Magic Lantern has given the ability of this Canon light, or the M light, and given it the ability to get 14-bit raw out of it, but only at 1080p. But the thing is, you can do so much with the 14-bit, like those 4 extra bits over 10-bit, and not only that, those 6 extra bits over the 8-bit files. You can do so much with it in the raw form in post-production, that it just becomes a cinema camera, which is why they decided to take that and repackage it into that like M Light body 3D printed cinema camera. So that might be something else if you're looking to tinker, right? I highly recommend you check them out as well, because it's definitely got, it's so intriguing to me, right? And it's got my mind captive, so to speak, to that idea of what you can do with like the least, so to speak, but just as long as you know what you're looking for, because they're willing to sacrifice 4K imagery at 8 and 10-bit because of the richness that they're able to get out of the 10-bit files on a much smaller sensor and a much more inexpensive camera that they're able to like finagle and hack. And I think that that's like the epitome of being a creator, right? Like, you're creating the tools that you're using to create with, and that is why I think that that's like just next level cool. Fly says, I'm team flip up as well. A lot of creators get stuck watching themselves while they're filming. Yes, they do. And it drives me nuts. It looks like they're looking off to the side instead of at the lens. Sly, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves, man. People do it all the time. They're so much more natural when they're being recorded, right? When they're being recorded, like when they say, here, you film me, right? They actually do it correctly. But when they get into their own homes and they get into their own heads, they start recording, and it's like if I'm looking at the screen, it is so obvious, right? Like, I'm looking at you, and then I'm checking comments and reading notes, right? But they are doing the whole time, they're like this, hey, what's up, guys? This yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on how things are going. It's just like, man, like, who are you talking to? You make me feel self-conscious. Like, if there's somebody in the room, like, like, you're like, yo, you talking to me, bro? Like, is there somebody in the room that I don't know about? Like, should I turn around? So I feel like I just have to have fun with it, because that's exactly how it feels. I'm like, it makes me feel like there's somebody else in the room. I'm like, yo, you talking to me, or am I missing something? John says, I was looking at the A7R5, but ended up getting the A7 IV. I've been very happy with it for the price. Absolutely. And the A7 IV is an amazing camera. And, there's a lot of people. I can mention one, I believe Manny Ortiz. He basically says that he has the pick of the litter, right? He can shoot whatever camera he wants. He's got manufacturers throwing their devices at him, so to speak. And he ended up, I'm not sure, purchasing, but definitely using on a regular basis the A7 IV. It's just the best all-arounder. I think another person who decided to go with the A7 IV as well was Sydney Dionson. I could be mistaken, but if I remember correct, I believe he said that that's like his favorite just go-to camera, because it's good, and so good on so many fronts. The fact that it can be a great 4K cinema camera, but then also give you great, 33 megapixel images and photography. So doing great on both fronts. Another camera that he was very happy with, which I think is why he upgraded to the A7 IV to like kind of throw a little bit more on there, throw the cherry on top, is basically he had the A7S III. And even though he was happy with 12 megapixel photos, right, and was very happy with the video codecs and the video files that he was getting in 4K, what he was using the camera for, he preferred having that same type of imagery. And some people, I don't know who, but like some people say that they actually prefer the 4K image out of the A7 IV much better than even the A7S III. I would have to put that to the test myself, but I digress. That, to their preference, that's just one of the best cameras all around for the price at the moment, which I don't doubt. Robert says, I am transitioning to V-mount batteries, okay, because my GH6 is way more power hungry than my venerable GH4. Then I can use it way longer lasting batteries on them all. That's cool. Yeah, another thing that I've done, because I haven't gone fully V-mount and D-tap, right, is I picked up one of these. Now I just put an Insta360 sticker on it, but it is just a 2600 or 2650 milliamp battery bank. So let me see if I get this correct. It's 100 watts of power delivery. Okay. 26,800 milliamps power bank, which, if I'm correct, this is the biggest battery that you're allowed to carry onto a plane, like in carry-on. And I got this for a couple of reasons. Yeah, my laptop, but also the fact that I can use this on a variety of my cameras to basically do the same thing. And all of my Sony cameras also receive power delivery through USB, but so that, like, right now, even though we're using the battery on this camera here, I hit the wrong one. This camera here, I have a USB plugged into it the same time. So the USB being plugged into it is giving it a trickle charge. So it's basically running as if it had a dummy battery. And all of these, like Sony cameras, the A6100, the A7R2, the A6600, and even the A7 or the ZV-1F right up here. This one is completely, as you can see right here, connected via USB. So the signal is a 720p signal that's giving you the top-down look of my desk here. And it's connected with one USB-C cable, which is this blue guy that you see right here. So this blue guy goes from there, trickles all the way through the back, connected to this camera right here, and is giving you the feed that you're seeing right now. So that's the ZV-1F, the cheapest Sony camera, and that one even has that ability to stay powered on throughout the whole time. So whether it's connected as like a live stream or to a power outlet, or using a power bank, all of these cameras, you're able to basically keep them on for almost an indefinite amount of time if you have enough juice. But the biggest reason why I picked this up is for this camera, which I talked about before, the Insta360, right? Which is why I put the sticker on it. The Insta360 X3, amazing 360 camera. And this thing, how could I tell you? Well, it can just run indefinitely if it's connected to USB-C, and it uses very, very little power. So this battery bank could keep this camera on basically for the entirety of the day, which is what I plan to do when I'm recording like long vistas while I'm driving to Creator Camp. So that's the plan on this. And I have a USB-C at a 90-degree angle. Where did I put that? I know I just got it recently. I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'm not gonna scroll and go off looking for a cable. But I did purchase a USB-C 10-foot cable that has a 90-degree like USB-C connection at the end. And the reason why, well, I put it back down, but it's so that I can connect it while this is outside to the USB-C there. Boop. That guy right there. And it's going to hang off of a 90 and be able to wrap it down like the extension pole and keep it nice and tight, maybe with a Velcro strap or two, but keep it nice and tight so that I'm able to keep this outside of my vehicle, but still being powered indefinitely from the inside. Oh, Aiden's giving me the signal. Thank you for keeping me on time. Let me see what's up. Okay. What did you do? Aiden. Aiden giving me his iPad because he did something to it. Let's set this back up. Okay, you good. Play with it. Yes. The boss man. James Hicks is in the house saying, "What up, yo? How are you doing, sir? Thanks for hanging out." Sammy says 8-bit is fine now because I'm posting to YouTube, but now I'm making short films and I want 10-bit, so the future will be Netflix approved. You see, love the fact that you have that whole thing set up. Says I also have my eyes on Zcam. Zcams are actually doing really good as of late. So now great prices, a nice camera under $3,000 with 6K video, 10-bit, and have a couple what was says 10-bit. I have a couple of months to think. In 4 days, I'm going to film school, so I will have options. That is amazing. In the film school, make sure that you test out as much as possible, Sam. You know, test out as much as possible so that you can see what you prefer and what you like. But what you're really going to end up liking is the lenses. And you're going to see that what I always say, glass before ass, is going to make more sense than anything. And that, you know, throw a little, you know, today's tip of the day, basically the difference between an f-stop and a t-stop, which is what's used in cinema, is that a T is more precise as far as the amount of light that you're going to be getting onto the sensor, because they always had to be more precise because they were always using an exact type of film when these, you know, terms were developed. So an F number, right, on your lens, right, is based on your aperture. So your aperture is based on the actual size, being the dimensions or the millimeters, the radius of how big the circumference of like the circle that is admitting or allowing light to hit the sensor, right? That is what aperture is. It is the biggest size hole that your camera can provide physically because of the size, and they put that into a number and rate it as your f-stop. When it comes to cinema lenses, it's the t-stop, and the t-stop has to do with the exact value of light that is actually being admitted onto the sensor. So they do care, but they don't value or put into account the size of the physical, you know, dimensions of the hole that is allowing the light through. All they're talking about with the T numbers is how much light is gonna hit your sensor, or in those cases the film in those days, because getting really nerdy, film is actually light burning an image onto the film itself. And if you overexpose, then you let too much light onto the film, and the film would burn, causing it to cut and break, and you would lose the entire production. It wasn't not so much as far as overexposing that you would lose the shot because nothing could be rendered, but it could literally melt within the camera, causing catastrophic damage if not done correctly. So those are the biggest differences, and that's getting like extra nerdy with it. But Sammy says, yes, I got cinema lenses, and I'm not going back any other. Not going back to any other lens. Exactly, man. Cinema lenses are great. Now, the fact that they don't have autofocus and you have to focus them, that's, that's the negative to them, right? But if that's what you're all about, you're shooting movies and or small videos or small films, yeah, and that's gonna be great. And let me also congratulate you on film school. So congratulations, and I can't wait to see what you produce after you gain so much knowledge from your time spent there. So that's gonna be really cool. And remember to enjoy it while you're doing it, because more than anything, the friendships and the creators that you're gonna meet in film school are people that are gonna be around your circle for many years to come. So I'm excited for you. But with that being said, let me see if there was any questions that I did not answer. If you have a question, please do so and put that in right now so that I can answer it before we call it quits. But no, it doesn't look like there's any questions. Well, last thing to say is that I'm really excited to see what is going to be the exact things that we get from these cameras. I'm really excited. Last thing to touch on was the A7CR, which is the fact that the A7C had a lackluster viewfinder. And one of the biggest features for me of the R series is not only the high megapixels, but extremely high, up to 10 million pixel electronic viewfinders that you would find that it was like IMAX for your eyeballs, for your retinas. When you put this machine to your face, it almost made you want to put two of them on your eyes so that you can see life through the Sony viewfinders, because it looked that much better in that little box. It's like it looks better than real life. But that's what I want to see what Sony comes out with, because for them to make a compact rangefinder style camera with a 61 megapixel sensor in it, right, giving you the image quality of the much bigger like R type cameras, which are also within that price range, $3,700, $4,000, around there. With that being said, right, they can't drop the ball on the viewfinder. You can't put a little rinky-dinky viewfinder on the fact that it's a rangefinder viewfinder. So it's going to be that much smaller. And if you put something that's like lackluster, that could be like the killer to the small compact size of the R. So if it doesn't overheat and gives 61 megapixels, the only thing that could be a negative to that camera whatsoever is if they drop the ball on the viewfinder. Which, now, if they have a banging viewfinder, something like amazing, like IMAX in the eye viewfinder on a rangefinder, right, compact, 61 megapixels, full frame, IBIS, so steady shot inside, because they usually do that on all of their full frames, that might one up the A7R5, right, in my eyes. And that's just a whole nother discussion that we can have another day. That I actually do love the rangefinder style of cameras. This small, compact, and I'm left eye dominant. So it's not like I'm using it like this. No, it is literally like engulf myself, take the shot, boom. And my A6000, since I started using that years ago and to where I'm at today, I'm still a viewfinder junkie. And I really do like the rangefinder style of cameras. If they can put all the pieces together and have like a really good viewfinder in that style, that might be the one that I go with. But if it's lackluster whatsoever, there's no hesitation for me to go into the A7R5 that has everything that I'm talking about. The IMAX in the eye and every, like feature under the sun, including this amazing AI autofocus with all the bells and whistles. So that's my thoughts on the A7C Mark II and the A7CR cameras, to be announced later. Well, should be just next week, if I can say it that way. Well, within a couple of weeks, so to speak. So, all right. I haven't seen any other questions. Let me make sure. Oh, Sammy says they have autofocus cine lenses just released. Oh, then I'm going to have to look into that. Thanks for the bit of info. All right. Yes. And Mr. Moderator, just like I, are excited to see what you are going to create. Yep. If it had all those specs, would that make Mr. Camera Junkie pull the trigger on a new camera? That's what I'm thinking. Like, that one might be the thing to set the goal. But when is the second question, right? Like, put it this way. I waited 3 years before I pulled the trigger on the A6600, right? I waited for the right time to see exactly what. So it's not like I'm in any real like need to like get the newest camera. But like I mentioned before, my next investment, what I am actually actively saving for, is the Apple Vision Pro. It is 13 cameras on my face doing the whole thing, and I really am excited to start messing around with this new version of video, their 3D reality recording. That's something that has not left my mind whatsoever. So that, as a camera junkie as well, is something that I can't wait to get my hands on, and I've been putting my savings and diligently making the account for that piece of hardware. Once that's purchased and released, right, and I have that, then I'll be doing the same thing for whichever camera I'm going to be pulling the trigger on. But my next major investment is going to be the Vision Pro, which is going to sneak up on us. I know it is, like, since it's been announced to right now, it's already been like a couple of months, right? And they're saying early, we got creator camp and then the holidays sneak in, and in no time this thing is going to be here, and I'm going to be like, wow, right? So that's exactly how I feel. Those are the plans as of right now. And then once I have the Vision Pro, then the next step will be, what is the next piece of hardware as far as cameras that I'm going to pull the trigger on. It might be something completely different because there's so much time between now and then, and more cameras that are going to be released, whether through Sony or someone else. So there's a lot of opportunities for, like you mentioned, for other cameras that I've been waiting for to also reduce in price because of new releases. Because just to give you a little bit of insight, Sony themselves hasn't really even said that the A6700, even though it's like the successor to the 6600, is not their flagship APS-C camera, which is very interesting because this, when it came out, was, right? This was the best Sony had an APS-C, and they put everything into this body. And now the the successor to this, the A6700, is not considered Sony's like flagship APS-C camera from their own mouths, saying like we got some more stuff coming. So it is very interesting, exciting to see what is possible. And there's a lot of things, like I can go on for another hour talking about the sensors and how they're reusing like the same technology, because what most people don't talk about is like the the photo sites, like proximity to each other, which is what makes a megapixel, right? How close they can stack or place the photo sites next to each other to give different resolutions to increase the megapixels, right? And in that way of thinking, then you know, seeing a 26 megapixel APS-C camera is actually just using the smaller size of the same 61 megapixel camera or sensor that we have on all these R cameras. But like, that's what I'm saying, like I digress, because the technology is not exactly the same, because of the fact that the R series, they have a stacked sensor, and the APS-C line do not. Those are still CMOS. But that's getting extremely nerdy. If you guys want me to get in on more of that information, just let me know by leaving a comment down below and asking what you want me to talk about. And you never know, I might do an entire live stream on it. But as of right now, we have completed it. Let me see this. Yes, we have done it. Completed another episode of the Camera Junkie live stream. And as always, I thank you all for taking the time and hanging out here with me. This was episode 142. And if you haven't gotten the gist already, we do this every single week without skipping a beat. So next week, same time, same place, we're going to be doing it all over again for episode 143 of the Camera Junkie live stream. All right, John's got a question. Said, did I miss Cities Gall? Came in a bit late. No, I did not have a Cities Gall with how busy I was, but I appreciate you for asking. That you know, the fact that you asked for it, man, that makes me, you guys are the best. Look, Kathy's asking for the same thing. You know, it makes me like, it gives me all the good feelings inside, because of the fact that it shows me that you guys appreciate the effort that I put into that segment week in and week out. You guys are absolutely the best. Look, Robert. You guys are awesome, man. But I'm sorry, it was so busy, a busy week, and today I didn't have enough time to put something together for Cities Gall. But I will make sure, hands down, that Cities Gall will be here next week. I just didn't have anything set. Nothing came to mind. So usually what I do is that while I'm researching all of these things, I link a channel that I'm watching that's, you know, like that falls in place with it, right? But another thing that I might start doing, like I did for Harry Mack, is just showing you all the types of creators and content that I consume and that I think you might be interested in as well, right? You might see some car creators, but I have over 400 channels on my YouTube subscriptions list, right? That I just go through, and what I was the hardest thing is to not repeat them, right? Because sometimes they fall into the same categories. But that's just me rambling on. Next week I will make sure that I have Cities Gall, and there's so many of you guys mentioning it. You guys are the best, but I just did not have it, and I'll own up to it. But we were able to complete episode 142, and 143 will have Cities Gall. Absolutely, I will make sure of it. Okay, so thank you as always. Thank you for hanging out. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I can't wait to see all of your smiling faces as we do it all over again next week, right here at the same spot. Talk to you.